Okay, all right, good. I'm glad that we can get things started. I'd like to say hello to everyone. This is our second live session, I think, today. And I'm really happy that we have people tuning in already. And I'm excited because today we have Kim Strobel with us. And Kim is just awesome. If you know anything about Kim, you know that she's an amazing individual. And last year, if you were on our summit, she did an amazing session all about the science of happiness. So if you did not see that, don't you worry. It is coming soon for one of our sessions as a replay in the open house. So don't miss that. But I want to give it over to Kim. And Kim, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, maybe a little bit of your background before we jump into talking about the social emotional teacher well-being today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Now, can I also see how many people are here, Chuck, or is that something that's only visible to you?
Well, it's on multiple channels right now. So right now we have about 20 people joining right now.
Okay, it just helps to know there's live people, right, that we're talking to out there.
Yeah, there's about 20 and it just keeps ticking up a little bit, which is cool, depending on the channel.
Awesome. So yeah, I am a former teacher. I spent a lot of time teaching fourth grade. And I'm a K-12 licensed ELA. So I then went on to become a literacy coordinator, which was a really great opportunity. It allowed me to teach at all levels, kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. And for any of you kindergarten teachers who are watching, I'm just going to tell you, I was way more fearful of the kindergarten students than I was like the AP chemistry, because that's like herding cats, right? Like you're like, get out from under the table. And but then I ended up spending about 2 months in a K-1 classroom, and I was amazed at the level of growth that those people see. They see more growth in those grade levels than any of the others, you know, because they come in and they know nothing. And so, and then I went on to become a curriculum director, and I had been giving like a little bit of professional development on the side. And in 2015, I told my husband, I'm like, I want to quit my curriculum director's job and start Strobel Education and travel across the country and be a motivational speaker. And my husband's like, what? You know, because like I married Mr. Laid Back, Mr. I'm going to work the same job for 29 years and be completely satisfied, and I'm not getting off my lily pad. And then he has this wife who, like, you know, she doesn't stay in the classroom, and she jumps to this job, and then she does this. And so Scott Strobel is a pretty cool, pretty zen guy, usually just kind of does, you know, follows whatever I want to do. But he was like, oh my gosh, you're going to give up this like stable curriculum job and insurance because you think schools might want to hire you?
Yeah.
So anywho, that's what I did. And in 2016, I launched Strobel Education. We started doing a lot of professional development. And then I started doing a lot of motivational keynotes across the country. Cool. Then I went, you know, I think it was 2018, and I'm like, hey, so I want to brand myself as the happiness coach and start this other business.
Okay.
And so I started KimStrobel.com, which is where I really work with people on just waking up excited every day to live their life. And I always tell people, Chuck, you know, I am a happiness coach, but that does not mean that I'm like sunshine, butterflies, and unicorns.
Yeah.
And some people, including my mom, think that I should be that just because I'm a happiness coach. Like I was having a really bad moment a couple weeks ago, and I was just upset and angry about something. And my mom's like, well, Kim, you are the happiness coach. I'm like, Mom, I'm a human being with normal emotions, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But I really became a happiness coach because it was really born out of my own struggle and my own trauma. I went down a really difficult road in my young adulthood. I got diagnosed with panic disorder and anxiety disorder that really crippled and limited my life for a very long time. And I have found, Chuck, that many teachers suffer from that does limit their life. And so for me, when I was going through that 20 years ago, and I still sometimes have reoccurring episodes of it, but it really made me dive into the self-help field. And so that's kind of how I did all the research on happiness and wellness and emotional well-being. And I really started to create my life from the inside out. And so that's kind of the very quick version of the happiness coach. Again, it doesn't mean that, I think that everything around me is just wonderful and la la all the time. But what it does mean is that I'm an intentional happiness practitioner in my life. And I have happiness habits that have really helped me in all areas. And so I'm kind of excited to talk to you all about that today.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I'll be honest with you, when with your session, The Science of Happiness, it actually gave me an entirely different perspective, because what I think most people would think is when you say, oh, you're the happiness coach, that you are happy all the time, like you had said. And one thing that I was questioning was, when it comes to that kind of stuff, is, all right, well, is this, I'm more of a, although I teach language arts, I'm this scientific type thinking person, right? So when it said Science of Happiness, I thought, well, let me look at this session and see what this is all about. And I was actually fascinated. I'm excited for people to watch that session this week, because the fact that you were bringing in literally the science of happiness, there's no other way of saying it, really kind of got me excited and made me realize that this is, for lack of a better word, this is a real thing. This is actually something you can be. But like you had said, we're all human beings, so nobody's happy and unicorns and rainbows all the time, right? And that's okay. That's
yeah. And it's funny, because if I would have, if you would have had a happiness coach on your seminar 10 years ago, or if the school district would have heard of oh, we have a happiness coach coming in, that's woo-wooey. That's a bit, much. But what we actually know now, straight out of Harvard University and the University of Pennsylvania, where Sean Aker, who literally travels the country like I do, but on a much bigger scale, and he works with Fortune 500 companies on employee well-being and teaching them the research and the tools and the strategies behind happiness, which is what I do in the education world, because we know now from the research that it's actually our happiness and our well-being that needs to be brought to the forefront. And that when we can bring that to the forefront, we can change every single business, education, and organizational outcome.
That's pretty cool.
It really is, because we've been taught that just put your head to the grindstone, just work really hard, put in 60-hour work weeks, try to make a lot of money. And when you can do all of those things, that leads to success in your life. But we actually know the formula is completely backwards, that when we get our brain at positive, we change every single business, organization, and educational outcome. And so I'm pretty passionate about this, because I feel like if anybody needs some strategies and some resources, it's the teachers. The teachers are so overwhelmed with the expectations that are placed upon them. Yeah. And I really feel like, it's easy to leave every day and be like, well, I wasn't enough today, or I didn't handle this situation well enough, or I didn't teach this lesson the way it's so easy to knock ourselves in this profession.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it almost becomes the norm, right? It's it just to kind of knock yourself down, or to blame yourself, or make excuses in a way where it ends up falling on your shoulders as teachers, right? I think part of that is, just by nature, I think teachers are caring people, right? So you want to make sure that you're able to care for everybody all of the time. And sometimes that's difficult. And if it doesn't work, quote unquote, you may end up blaming yourself. And I think that you're absolutely right. As far as anyone who needs these tangible strategies, although obviously lots of people do, I definitely think teachers could benefit from strategies and tangible ways to be happy and to have that good social, emotional well-being.
Yeah, one of the top reasons that we get hired to go into schools and businesses with a focus on employee well-being is because what we know from the science and the research, and this is right out of Sean Aker, he's been featured on Oprah, and he wrote Before Happiness, and he wrote The Happiness Advantage. Okay. And one of the strongest pieces of research that came from his study of over 10 years was a positive brain is 31% more productive than a brain at negative, neutral, or stressed.
Wow.
So when we think about that, how many of our brains during the school day let's be honest, it's July, and back when I was still in the classroom, come about the second week of July, my stress levels start climbing, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to go back to like working full time and managing my home full time? And I would do this crazy thing. I would go to Walmart and I'd buy like 20 pounds of ground beef, and I'd start like frying it up and browning it and putting it in little Ziploc bags. And like, it was like this whole like survival thing that would happen in July just to get ready to go back to school.
Yeah, I think people can relate to that. I think that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah. And so when we think about that, wow, because teaching is like, it's a calling. We all know this. Like, this is something that is deeply embedded in our heart. Like, if you went into teaching, it's because you felt like this really strong call to show up and serve kids. But I call an ACE check. And the bottom line is, it's a hard profession to stay in. I mean, what we know right now from the research right out of Berkeley is that 75% of teachers and 84% of school leaders report extremely high levels of stress.
Wow.
Which means their brain's not at positive. It can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the skills and the strategies because we're placed in a system that expects so much from us.
Yeah, I agree. So then I guess my question to you would be, what would be some strategies that you would be able to share with teachers that are facing some of these stressful situations, or maybe some teachers that are extremely stressed, thinking, I don't know what's going to happen even in the fall. So the stress level's rising. What are some, I guess you could say, some techniques or strategies that we could do when it comes to that social emotional well-being?
Yeah. Really, just drink more wine.
Hey, that can work.
I do think the wine intake has gone up the last few months.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, let me just kind of, if I could tell everybody a little bit about the happiness research so that we kind of know how much of it is really in our control. I think it really helps to just understand. Sometimes we tend to think that happiness is out of reach because of the certain circumstances of our life or the profession that we serve in. And so I'm going to give the happiness research if you think that would be helpful. And then I'm going to give you some tips for how to increase it.
I think it'd be perfect. Definitely. Okay.
So, and by the way, somebody watching said, right now we are in the public eye, and that's making it even worse and higher. And I 100% agree. I think that teachers are at an all-time high right now because, we get eaten alive anyway in this profession, it seems like. Yeah. And so this is all just contributed to that. So I really want to acknowledge that. Yeah. So here's the deal. We all have what's called a baseline happiness level. And I think I talk about this in the training that I did for you. But maybe, Chuck, my baseline happiness level is here, and maybe your baseline happiness level is here. So what that means is that something good happens in our life. Like you and I don't know, maybe we get a new home or a new car or a new relationship or whatever it is. And our happiness level will go up for a very short period of time, but it almost always drops right back to whatever our baseline is.
Okay. That's interesting.
It is. What's more interesting, what's hard to wrap my brain around, but the science is super strong when it comes to this. The science says that you and I can also endure really traumatic things in our life. We can endure loss and grief and illness. We can endure abuse. We can have had something really bad happen in our life. And that after a period of time, our brain has this kind of uncanny ability to reset itself back to where we were before that event happened. So I sometimes, as a person, I struggle with this, right? Because I think there are certain things that if they happened, I would really be hard to convince myself that I would someday get my previous happiness level back. Yet you and I can look around and see evidence of this all around us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Elie Wiesel, who endured terrible tragedy, who was in the concentration camp, in the Holocaust, who lost his wife and his mother and his father, and he had all of this terrible stuff happen to him. He went on to live a life of great meaning and great joy. And so it's interesting to know that for most of us, we kind of have this baseline that we almost always return to.
That's interesting. And so would you say that with that whole the whole baseline concept, it's even though sometimes we're higher and we're lower, if I were, and this is maybe this is a silly question, but if my baseline's this here and your baseline is here, does it really matter, or how does that work?
Yeah. So let's talk about where the baseline comes from, because I'm sure everybody's like, so where does this come from? How do we know what our baseline is?
Yeah.
So if you think of happiness as a pie chart, what we know is that 50% of your long-term happiness is genetic. It comes from your mom or your dad or a mixture of both. And to be honest, when I tell people this, I'll be like on the stage and I'll be like doing my keynote and I'll tell them this and I'll see like half of the heads in the stage just like, I'm so screwed. I'm so screwed, right? But there is a genetic tendency to this. We all work with people who are in the same stressful situations that we are, and some of them just kind of float through the day and it's like water rolls off their back like a duck. And then there's others of us that are like, you know, so stressed out, and so we let the job steal all of our joy. And so there is a genetic disposition to this. Some of us are just born to kind of go through the world and see all that's right, and some of us not so much.
Yeah.
That's 50%, okay? So don't give up, because we got another 50% to talk about.
Okay.
So one of the most shocking revelations to me was that only 10% of your long-term happiness comes from your external circumstances. And so what do I mean by that? I mean, what kind of car you drive, what kind of home you live in, if you're married, divorced, single, or widowed, you know, your weight. You know, that's one of the things that we do. We're like, oh, I'm never going to be happy unless I lose that 20 pounds. Well, here's what we know. The science says that that's really only robbing you of about 10%. Oh, wow. But we all chase the 10%, right?
Yeah.
We all say, we play the what I call the win-if game. If I could lose 20 pounds, I'd be happier. If I could find a partner, I'd be happier. If I could make more money, I'd be happier. If I could be in a different career, I'd be happier. Like, we play this if-win game, and we give it way more than 10%.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny when you think about it in that context. It's absolutely right. That's what we do. Like,
I know the science, Chuck. I've got a bookshelf behind me of like 50 happiness books that I've read. And my darn brain still says, Kim, if you can just get the lake house, you're going to be happier.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know this stuff, but it's still really hard not to chase it and not to depend on it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
you know, it puts things into perspective a little bit.
It really does. It's actually fascinating, right? But and like you had said, the science is proving it, but it's hard to kind of to believe it, right? It's
So like here's what I tell people. You know, we all have really bad things happen to us. Like, I don't know, maybe your spouse left you and the kids and you're completely heartbroken and devastated. I get it. Like, you're going to be less happy for a while.
Yeah.
The problem is, if 3 years from now you're still self-loathing and you're still, then that's your problem. Because we all have to do the work on ourselves. We all have to take 100% responsibility for our life. And so it means that we endure really terrible things, but if we are willing to do the work on ourselves, we cannot let it eat up so much of the pie.
I like that.
It's not easy. I mean, you know, 2 years ago when my son's basketball team won the basketball sectional for the first time in 26 years, I mean, this little small town was on fire. Yeah. And then we went to the regional and we beat the #1 team in the state that morning. And then we lost to a team that we should have never lost to in the afternoon, Chuck. And I'm just going to tell you that for 6 weeks, I let that stupid incident steal way more than 10% of my happiness. Right? My husband's like, you have to let it go, Kim. We didn't win. We didn't go to semi-state. Quit talking about it. You're ruminating about it, right?
Yeah.
So like, we all do this. We're all human beings.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I think that happens a lot in sports, right? Because it takes you up and then takes you down. And
and I'm super competitive, Chuck.
I know. I mean, it's interesting too, because then, and it does, you let that, you know, simmer forever, it seems like.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, you're letting that 10% really kind of take over.
Yeah, like the basketball boys were at my house 3 days later and they were fine. They were happy as a lark, you know? Okay, so if 50% is genetic, and 10% is our external circumstances, then that leaves 40% of the pie left.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I've studied and researched for the last 40 years. And here's what I'm here to tell everyone. You have the ability to increase your happiness levels by up to 40%.
Now, how do you do that?
Oh my gosh, we need like another 8 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm going to actually give your people one tip.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to give them one tip, and this is one of the top 5 ways you can increase your happiness levels.
Okay.
And it's very simple. It takes 2 minutes a day, and it's called gratitude. Now, I know we've all heard this, right? Have a gratitude journal. I mean, Oprah preached this to me for 10 years, and then I finally did it. But I started to read the research behind it. And so what we know is that if you can write down 3 different things that you are thankful for each and every day for the next 21 days, we can actually rewire your brain towards positive. So we know that as human beings, the average human being has about 70,000 thoughts a day.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know that for the average human being, 80% of those thoughts are negative.
Wow.
So that means, Chuck, that most of us are having 56,000 negative thoughts in a day.
Yeah, and that's a lot.
But most of us would say, hey, I'm a pretty positive person.
Yeah.
But the problem is that those thoughts are running in the background. So like I tell people, you wake up in the morning and sometimes within the first like 30 seconds, you've had 52 negative thoughts. Like you woke up and you said, oh my gosh, I didn't get enough sleep. I don't have enough energy. I don't want to go to work today. And then like you get out of bed and you're like, oh, my back hurts. And then you walk to the bathroom and you think about your knees hurting. And then you get in front of the mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a fever blister that popped out. And then you go get dressed and you put your pants on and you're like, these are way too tight. Right? Like it's like this entourage of all of these like negative thoughts. And I'm going to tell you why we do it too. Okay, because I don't want anybody like knocking themselves and being like, oh my gosh, she's talking about me, or, you know, I'm a real negative Nelly. The problem is that the amygdala is the back part of our brain, and it's called the reptilian brain. And it's the part of the brain that in archaic times, it kept us safe.
Okay.
So we literally, our brain was wired to scan for negativity and danger in order to keep us safe. And even today, even though we're not worried about shelter or that we're going to get really murdered or we're going to have enough food, we still operate with the amygdala in our brain. And the amygdala is taught to scan for negativity. So the only way we can change that is to change the neural feedback loop that is running in our brain. So if you see all these like little loops in our brain, they're all like these little roads that we travel. And whatever road you travel the most gets the deepest rut, the deepest path, and it's the one you're more naturally inclined to do. And so when we start our gratitude practice, what we do is we actually create a new neural feedback loop in our brain, and our brain begins to scan for everything good in our life versus constantly focusing on everything that's not so good.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so it takes 2 minutes a day. And I tell, like, I do this with my students too, right? Like we write down 3 gratitudes, 3 things that we're thankful for each and every day. And I actually have like a little gratitude tracker. If you want, I can send it to you, or I can post it in the comments. But it's a gratitude tracker that actually gives everyone like the prompts that they would need to help them get started with a gratitude practice. And then it lays out 21 days for you so that you can go ahead and start working on your 21 days of gratitude. Is that something your people would be interested in?
Yeah, I think that would be cool. And I think you're actually in the Teacher Success Lounge. You could actually post that there. And then when you go in, you can put it up as a file if it's a PDF or something, and it'll go right into the files.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'll try to do that, and then I might send it to you in an email as well.
That would be perfect. That'd be excellent.
Cool. So yeah, so that's one, it's a teeny tiny habit. It takes 2 minutes a day, but it is a game changer.
I think that's awesome. And I think that it's something, again, that's something just tangible that could be done. And like you said, 21 days. And I think it's worth it, you know, that effort. Like put the effort in, take that challenge and just do it and see the difference. I think that's cool.
everybody wants to be happier, right? But like I tell people all the time, I have intentional happiness habits that are a part of my daily life. I wake up in the morning, I drink my green smoothie, I get my gratitude journal out, I do my gratitudes, then I do my affirmations, then I take my dogs for a walk, then I do my exercise. Like, we have to be intentional about our life, otherwise we're creating it by default.
Yeah, that's true. I love it.
So anywho, yeah, that's it. And that's one of the reasons. So when COVID hit, Chuck, I really, I have always wanted to implement a happiness curriculum for kids, but also for teachers. Okay. And so it gave me the opportunity to do that. And what I did is I created the Happy Academy. And it's just a 10-month program that educators can do, where we walk through 10 different topics that I think are really relevant for educators. Like, I teach these teeny tiny little happiness tips each month. It might be focused on relationships. It might be focused on your inner critic. It might be focused on the practice of gratitude in your life or happiness habits. But I thought, teachers really need something that they can have throughout the school year that helps them be able to not let this job eat them alive. So that, the profession doesn't own them. Instead, they own the profession. And so, if anybody's interested, they can certainly just shoot me an email over, and I can walk them through it. I'm actually going to do I have a free Facebook group called She Finds Joy, and I'm going to do a little thing on that tonight, because we've literally just launched the Happy Academy today. So it's just, I think it's time to put our well-being at the forefront.
I agree. And I think, and you called it the She Finds Joy Facebook group, right?
Yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll get that link from you. So when this goes up as a recording for people, they'll have the links right there, because we put this kind of in the section. So this will have the links for everything that they can go and do. And obviously we can put a link for that Happiness Academy as well. Is it just, what is the website for that?
So, so there's the, I will email you all the links. How about that, Chuck? Will that help? Is it okay if I email you all those links?
That'll work, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll email you, because there's one where like districts can purchase it for all of their schools, but then we're also running an individual teacher cohort for teachers who just want to join individually.
Perfect. So yeah, email me those links. I'll put those up. I can even put them up on your session when it comes up too. So that'll work well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Well, I really hope that everybody knows that, like, it's okay to feel the way we do right now. But one of the biggest things that we can do is really honor and take care of ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. So I just want to say thank you, Kim, for being here, for spreading joy and happiness, and really just giving some great tangible strategies. And I'm excited for that 21-day tracker. We can put that in the group, and all the links and everything that you send, I'll make sure that we get up there too, so people can check everything out that you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So I will talk to you soon. I'm sure we'll see you in the group, but thanks again for coming on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.